Hello, everybody. It's Micah. How's it going today? I'm going to be talking about LTL architects today and how some of their research inspired my own and related to my own project that I kind of spun off of their methods and their contexts that they work with. Here we go. Today, we're going to be talking about human building relationships through their view, relating to the discourse of human interaction with space and what that kind of says about design, the method of creating spaces based on criteria, how they deal with that, and then context in the way that site to building relationships are informed by outside influences. The main idea of architecture that we're talking about is this relationship between the human and the space, the building and the site, and the outer context, and that rapid development of scale from small to large, and the way that some methods can start to deal with architectural elements in that way. You start to see here how humans can interact with space, if it's a balustrade, if it's different types of seating that integrate into the space, less of furniture in the space and more of the ways that the space can reach out and interact with a human that also interacts with it. Then you have space to space interaction, how the different qualities of each space can bleed into each other and relate to each other, whether it's an auditorium that attaches to an outside area, or different classrooms or offices that relate to each other. And then you have space to site interaction, which can be a large, grand gesture, different entryways, different ways that there are courtyards or other public to private areas between a building and its site. These are kind of the three different relationship scales that we're going to be dealing with today. A lot of the ways that we're going to explore them is the same way that LTL explores them, which is through sections and different ways of seeing relationships. Here you can see people looking from space to space, understanding not just how the spaces connect physically, but also visually, which is a big part of their work. Here you can see how lighting elements become banister elements. That's one way that even just small details in the building can begin to imply relationships between one space to the other. One of the big tenets of LTL architects that we're going to be dealing with today is connecting spaces physically, conceptually, and through materials and elements. Here again, we see that kind of space to site and space to space relationships, how they have different ways of physically sussing themselves out. One of the main elements that we're taking from LTL Architects' idea is when they were strapped for money, when they didn't have a lot of changes to make to a building. It had all the space they needed, but they just needed to relate different spaces to the building, and then the building to the site, and all of that to the human scale. When they needed to do that, they made a skin around the building to relate all these things together in a way that was quick and cheaper than just completely tearing down walls or other things like that. And they did so through a combination of observation and interviews and site conditions that they reacted to. So it's this kind of connecting tissue between different areas that's responding to a lot of different conditions around the site, such as circulation, such as sound and traffic, where are people coming from, where is traffic, where are people going to be parking and then going into it, where are the people that work there regularly going to end up. These are all kind of answered by the site contexts. Here we start to see that sectional relationships start to come back in. There's hard relationships where people can't, where it's more meant to be more of a private area, and it's a hard relationship. It's still related to the outdoors, but it's offset. There's a soft relationship where they want to be open to pedestrian areas or more closely related to the college educational larger culture that they're relating to. And then there's this very solid indoor to outdoor relationship, such as a bench that turns into a receptionist desk. So we see all those, all the factors that are relating to that, all the contexts relating to the form. We can see how the forms either create shelter, here, or create circulation, kind of an entryway, an open form that funnels people in, or ways that it can reach inside and start to relate, or private areas that are kind of more completely cut off by the element. The big thing about this element is that you can take away the materiality, you can take away, the fact that it's wood or slats or anything else, and you can just look at it this way, in this manner, and see that it creates open forms, it creates shelter, and it relates to different places on the site, which starts to focus in on a much more specific way to look at spatial relationship and site relationships. This is a method that we can reapply in different areas in different ways that we want. Here we can see a student campus building that has strong interior kind of connections to each other, but those interiors don't really bleed into the exterior, and those don't really relate too much to the site. So the changes that we're proposing is this building is already new, it's slightly simple as an exterior envelope. We can kind of create skins and other relationships to it that can relate everything together through the methods and the context that we've already been looking at. Here you can see kind of a deeper explanation of why some of these things are the way they are. Here, this relates directly to some of the busiest pedestrian walkways. It's closest. It would be a kind of a on-the-go space for people to hang out at. This is the path to the main entrance. It's a little long, and it kind of just looks like an approach. The only way you know that that's the way to go, there's a path. If we instead create something that funnels people in and kind of shows them through this formal gesture that this is the place to go, then that creates a funneling effect towards the entrance that is also very interesting. Private gathering spaces would be offset from the pedestrian walkways, where the building occupants would be meeting more. There would be a hard separation between the public area and the private area, same as these conditions here. There would be a hard relationship and a soft relationship. The soft relationship would happen more here, where you expect people to be able to peel off of the walkway and kind of interact with the building's inhabitants and residents more as a larger culture for the college than as something that just the building residents can go to and interact with each other. They can interact with the larger context and site and culture that they're embedded in. You can see where areas where, such as the front of the building here, where you really wouldn't want to hang out because you'd feel like you're front and center, in front of parking, in front of traffic, people trying to get into the building. This becomes cladding here, not as much of a public gathering space. It can slowly become cladding as soon as it's not really a desirable area to be. This other public gathering space, you have this main circulation to the entrance, but you can come off to the side to start relating kind of more casually to the building's occupants. You can see here open forms are still employed just as they were in our other example. Forms that would funnel people, forms that would create awnings and other types of shelter that kind of beckon people in and welcome them to the area. Hard separation in private areas, like we said, limiting views, setting people off from loud traffic so they can have a little bit more peace and quiet compared to some of the public areas that are by parking, that are by circulation and traffic offset from each other. And from all of that, you create something that turns from cladding when it needs to be cladding, that turns to programmatic screen, bench, even something that's more akin to an art installation or something more for play that people can lean up against and wait for someone to pick them up here. You can have awnings that more create a space that people might be waiting at in the rain. You can create other awnings and other types of interior spaces that are still public and outdoors, but they're also sheltered by the building and informed by the building. So in these ways, all these different scales, the site, the broader site, the building, the spaces inside, the spaces outside, can all relate to each other through one visual idea, one visual component that can be placed in after the fact and relate everything together instead of just having building, hard stop, site, hard stop, larger context. These can all bleed together and instead imply a connection, imply something greater than just a building placed in this area, more like something that is informed by the outside conditions, which bleed into the interior and explain to us, why is this building the way it is in this place? It's because of this and this and this. It's because of its relationship to the pedestrian walkway, the parking, the entrances. They're all relating to something else in a way that feels flowing and natural. And in this way, we create a process, a way of thinking of things, methods and contexts that all relate inwards towards the single idea of different scales and how to connect them to each other. All right, that's all the time I have for today. Thank you for watching.